Good afternoon, everyone. We're so glad you can join us today for Making Math Visible with Justin Backeberg. We'll start in just a few minutes as folks come onto the webinar and find their audio and on and on. So welcome. In the meantime, you're welcome to just make yourself comfortable, and we will get started here in just a few minutes. And it looks like we have a nice group of folks today joining us. That's great. That's terrific. All right, let's give it about 30 more seconds, and then we will begin. All right. Well, how about we get started? Again, welcome everyone to Making Math Visible. We're so lucky today to be talking with Justin Backeberg from Reedsburg Area High School in Reedsburg, Wisconsin. And as you all know, this educator event is brought to you by Wacom Technology. 35 years of digital pen input technology. Always great supporters of creativity and what creativity brings to the world, and now to education, which is really exciting for all of us who work in education. I'm Linda Winter, and I'm happy to be working today both with the Wacom team and with Justin Backeberg. So without further ado here, let's jump to the next slide. Our session today will last about an hour, and we'll save the last 10 minutes for your questions. Please use the Q&A feature right in Zoom to submit your questions. We won't always see them through the chat, and we can't see you. We're all lucky that we can see Justin. So use the Q&A, and we will do our best to get all of the answers to you. We are recording this session in a YouTube link. We will forward a YouTube link to you after the session, and we hope that you will share this with your colleagues. Today, we're going to take a look at some innovative and yet accessible things every educator can look at doing and making their own around math instruction. And the reason we're looking at math instruction this way is that these are techniques that we're learning from Justin. We'll work in a traditional classroom for those of you who are going back to a traditional schedule, in a hybrid schedule, or or fully remote, or what we're learning are going to be flux environments as things change during the school year. So let's jump forward here just a little bit. I want to set the stage for you today because I think you'll really enjoy hearing what Justin has to say, asking him questions, and I have a lot of questions for Justin. Justin is one of those rare educators who's a graduate of the high school where he's now teaching math, and he'll tell you more about that. He earned his bachelor's degree in math education at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. And he also he coaches athletics, a variety of sports. And we're hoping sometime this year he's going to be able to get back to that and do that. So let's jump ahead here. And I'm going to let Justin take it from here. But I want Justin to introduce himself by telling us about his journey from a more traditional math educator to where he's at today. So Justin, thank you so much for being here with us today, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm Justin Backeberg, high school math teacher. I'm just getting ready to start my 9th year of teaching. And I guess to start off with, my first couple of years, I guess I would say I was a very traditional teacher in the sense that I spent most of my time up at my smartboard presenting lessons. And I guess really what it came down to was I wasn't really sure how effective I was really being in that teaching style. So towards the end of my third year teaching, I kind of started to really question myself as a teacher, and really wanted to look into some alternative teaching methods that I could use to try to benefit my students more, so that I could spend more time helping them with the math itself, as opposed to just being up at the front of the room and presenting things all the time. And so that's where I really stumbled across the idea of using a flipped classroom. And for those people who don't know, a flipped classroom, at its very basics, it really just takes the roles of the in-classroom time and kind of the at-home homework time and interchanges those roles. So instead of presenting a lesson in the classroom, what I've done and what I've spent a lot of time doing over the last few years is recording instructional videos that would normally be my lesson, record those videos, post them out on YouTube for my students to watch. So then I don't need to be spending that 40 minutes in front of my class presenting material. We can really focus more so on doing the math and digging deeper into different math concepts. So I guess the basic idea of it is that students would watch a video or maybe a couple of videos the night before, then they would come to class the next day with that information already at hand for them and ready to use in whatever activity or problems that we're solving on that day.
That makes great sense, Justin. And there's a lot of models for flipped. I mean, some things are flipped, some things are presented in class, but for any of you in our audience who have had experience with flipped classroom, we'd love to hear about your experiences in the Q&A for sure. And anything you want to know from Justin about how he's continuing to make this work. What we're seeing on the screen, this is your class website, right, Justin?
Yep.
And the more I've talked with Justin, the more I've learned that this is really one of his instructional hubs. And you want to just spend a minute before we look at the website itself, Justin, how important this became in the move to remote, and kind of what happened starting in, what was it, March 13th for you, I think, was the last day of class.
That's Friday the 13th.
Yeah, kind of share what's going on with how you use the website as soon as that happened.
Yeah, so yeah, my website is really where I host most of my things. I have all of my videos hosted on YouTube, but I also have links available on my different classroom pages. So if you're one of my pre-calc students and you go onto the pre-calc page, you're going to see everything broken down chapter by chapter, and it's going to list out all the videos. So when I say, you're going to watch this video on solving quadratic equations, you can just go to that pre-calc page. You can find that video and it'll send you off to where you need to go to be able to watch that and take care of things.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. You also have something on your website that I think others will find so useful. Do you want to talk a little bit about the flipped classroom intro letter and why you did that, et cetera? Maybe we can even take a look at that.
Sure. So yeah, this is a letter that I send home at the beginning of each school year to the families that I'm working with, just because it's a different teaching style than the parents would have grown up with, and even the students, it's different than they've experienced before. So I print out this letter, and it really just goes through the how I flip my classroom and the why I flip my classroom, and really what the parents can expect to see and what the students can expect when they're in class with me. So I tried to make it as comprehensive as possible to kind of cover all of the different situations. So it lays out what class time will look like and kind of what the expectations are of students, and
sure,
and how to go about being as successful as possible with this different method of presenting things.
Okay. And the other piece of this is, if we go back just to your class website homepage, this way students can always find assignments, check some of just the housekeeping, the classroom management stuff about retaking tests, et cetera, all those things, right? But
Yeah.
they can also get to your YouTube page from here as well.
Yeah, I've got a link directly to my YouTube page, and then on the individual class websites, I have links directly to all the videos,
and
just to try to keep things organized.
Yeah. And you organize it by prep, right? So you've got, you can see up at the top, last year, geometry, pre-calculus. This year, your schedule's changing a little bit, right? You're teaching.
Yeah, I'll have to make a little bit of an adjustment. I'm adding Algebra 1 this year, so I'll have to go through and create a new page to put up there and start getting links live on there and everything.
Okay. And the more sites to visit, Justin, what's there for kids? Is it math resources or? Yeah,
so there are links to other people who kind of have math videos out there. Okay. Sometimes it's helpful to hear things maybe just being presented in a different way. Every teacher kind of has their own methods of presenting different concepts. Sure. So, maybe something that I'm presenting isn't quite clear. They could go and check out one of these other videos to see if that could help reinforce that idea.
And I know we didn't practice this ahead of time, but can we look at like either your geometry or pre-calc class just to kind of see how you're organizing that? Because I think it sometimes helps everybody to begin to see kind of how you organize online, because this was all in place before anybody went remote, right?
Correct.
This is the way you were organizing things.
So yeah, I do feel like I was kind of lucky in the sense that my students were already kind of used to doing this online thing before everything shut down. I've been flipping my classroom for 5 years. So I've kind of built up my library of resources along that time. So yeah, my students, day one, when we roll in at the beginning of September, they start getting introduced to this idea of watching instructional videos and how to properly go about that, because watching a math video is way different than watching a movie, or if you're just on YouTube watching some random cat video or something. This is trying to learn something from a video is way different. Yeah. So it has to be approached differently.
Makes perfect sense. And we are starting to get a couple questions in, and I'm going to take them as we get them here just in a little bit, so I don't forget. And someone's asking, can we share the parent letter with them? And we'll certainly share Justin's website address so that you can see a sample and maybe think about making that your own. And folks, these resources will be available, and we'll post them on the recording. And my hunch is we'll get emails out to all of you with some of these resources. So if you can't read all of it right now on your screen, not to worry, we'll get you there. Okay. So let's go back to Justin's main page. We've passed geometry. We all got A's. Okay. And then let's spend a few minutes. I want Justin to talk to you a little bit about how he's creating videos, and we want to look at a couple of videos, but let's take a look at your YouTube page, because that's really where not so much the assignments and on, but this is the instructional part of the equation here, right, Justin?
Yeah. So yeah, this is my YouTube page here, and I've got an introduction there that kind of a lot like the letter, just kind of introduces what the flipped classroom is, the why I'm doing it, and that kind of thing. But then you'll see that I have my videos broken down by class. So I've got the geometry set out there, organized by chapters. My advanced algebra class. This was one that I wasn't. This was a brand new class that we had just added this past year. So I was kind of teaching my way through it, and I wasn't flipping that one yet, but once everything shut down, I had to start making videos and getting those posted out here. So that's why this one is a lot smaller than all the other ones. But then you can see my pre-calc down below there. Again, all organized by chapter.
Okay. So you found a way to really align this with your textbook, right?
Yeah.
And the scope and sequence in the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
So kids have multiple ways to get at understanding and comprehension here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's important. The videos and the chapters follow along with what we've got in our textbooks. So that way, as they're watching the videos, or as they're even, if they're reading through their textbook, the stuff that they're going to see is going to match up really nicely.
Okay. And we already have a question in about what do you use to make your videos, and we're going to get to that in great detail. So just bear with us here, but let's take a look at a couple of videos first. And
Sure.
Since it's almost time for school to start, we'll just start with Geometry Chapter 1. How about that one? The essentials of, or I'm sorry, which one are we using? Whichever one we're using that we set up. Sorry, Pete on technical did not mean to throw you a curve. But this will also show you a little bit about how Justin's producing these and how he's using his Wacom Intuos.
Hey guys, Mr. Backerberg here. In this video, we're going to look at the mid-segment theorem. So as we're talking about a mid-segment, what we're talking about is a segment that connects the midpoints of two sides of a triangle. So as we're taking a look at this triangle, let's call this triangle ABC. Let's say that this point right here, and I'm going to call it M, let's say that M is the midpoint of this segment AB. So this piece is congruent to this piece. And let's say we've got another point over here, and I'm going to call this one N. And let's say N is the midpoint of BC. So this piece is congruent to this piece. So then if we connect M and N together, then that MN segment would be a mid-segment. Now every triangle is going to have three mid-segments, because if we find the midpoint of AC, so say it's right here, and I'm going to call that point P, and if we connect point P to point N, and point M to point P, then those are also mid-segments. Now in this picture, we've got that DE mid-segment drawn out for us, and there's going to be a couple properties that we're going to talk about. The first property is that mid-segment DE is going to be parallel to its corresponding side CB, so we can put arrows on those to show that those are parallel to each other. The other relationship deals with the size, how long this mid-segment is, and the length of this DE mid-segment is going to be 1/2 the size of the CB segment. So let's say we knew the length of segment CB was 10. Then because that's 10, DE automatically has to be half of that, so it's 5. Now triangles are very strong and stable shapes, so they get used a lot in engineering. So like as we're looking at this roof truss down in the bottom right hand corner, we've got a bunch of triangles highlighted for us. So in this picture, we know that UV and VW are going to be mid-segments. Those are
That's great. That's great. So already we're getting lots of questions about how do you make the videos, and we're going to get to that. And a few other questions, but you can see how Justin is using the core content from his his core curriculum content, but he's teaching just as he would in a classroom on a smart board. He's annotating, etc. So let's move from geometry, and everyone loves a good quadratic equation. So let's take a look at that. Okay, then we'll answer some questions.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Hey guys, Mr. Backerberg here. In this video, we're going to look at solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So when we're looking at the standard form of a quadratic equation, that's going to look something like ax squared plus bx plus c
equals 0. And one strategy that we've used earlier on this year is factoring, but not every quadratic equation is factorable. So we need to have another strategy available to us to be able to solve these equations. And that's where completing the square is going to come into play. Now, one big rule with completing the square is we need to make sure that our a value, the number in front of that x squared, is just a 1 before we get started. And then what we want to do is we actually want to take that c value, that constant term on the end, and we're going to move that over to the other side. Now, since our a value is 1, we don't really need to keep it on there. So then our equation would say x squared plus bx equals negative c, and I left that space in here for a reason. To complete the square, what we're actually going to look at is this b value, and we're going to take our b value, divide it by 2, and then square it. And whatever answer we get, we're actually going to add in here in our equation, and that's going to create a nice factor set for us. But we can't just add it to one side without throwing the balance of our equation off, so we also need to add that b over 2 squared on the right-hand side as well. And then, like I said, we're going to be able to factor out the left-hand side really nicely, and then actually use our square root property to finish solving this equation by completing the square. So when we're looking at the standard form of a quadratic equation, that's going to look something like ax squared plus...
Okay, and these videos are available. Folks can go into your YouTube channel and take a look. But one thing I think is just fascinating in here, Justin, is the way you're using color. And you're using it for, I'm assuming, to sort of cement concepts. Any hint you want to give any of us here?
Yeah, just
using color?
When I'm solving an equation or when I'm writing things out, I try to just use different colors as maybe a way to say, hey, I'm doing something a little bit different in this step compared to what I was just doing. So just showing that, you know, we've kind of moved on from one specific area and now we're talking about something a little bit different.
And we just had a quick question. We're going to go back, but somebody said, how do you do it? Is it just a click of the pen, or is it a change on your... How are you making the colors change like that?
Yeah, so, and that kind of goes into some of the software that I use to make my videos.
Okay.
I have a smartboard in my classroom. So even back when I was doing, I guess what I would consider the traditional teaching, I had made all of my slides on Smart Notebook, which is the software that runs nicely with the smartboards. So I didn't, there was really no reinventing the wheel. I had just taken the slides that I already had created and then did some screen recording of that. So within Smart Notebook, there's different pen options that you can choose from with different colors. So it's just a quick click on a different color and then get back to writing.
Okay, so it doesn't interrupt your workflow. Really
it's pretty smooth, and a lot of the whiteboarding apps that you look at have quick, easy color changeovers that you can utilize to be able to do that.
All right. Well, let's head for the next slide. But there have been a couple questions here that have come up. First of all, let's just talk for a second about flipped classroom. And one of the questions that came in is, how do families react to flipped classroom? How do kids react to that? Is that mostly positive, or have you dealt with challenges there?
Yeah, I would say 99% positive. Especially looking at like my pre-calc kids, you're starting to get into some higher level math concepts. And, you know, even with like algebra, you might have somebody at home that would be able to help you with those topics. But when you really get into some of those higher level things, the chances of having a parent or guardian at home that really understands that material is maybe a little bit slimmer. So I've heard a lot of appreciative parents who say, you know, I haven't been able to help my student with their homework, but now I don't have to worry about that so much, because the whole idea of the flipped classroom is really the only expectation is that they're watching a video at home. So then when they get to school, I'm there as, I guess, the content expert to be able to help them on those problems that, you know, they might struggle with when they're at home.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, 99% positive feedback.
Makes perfect sense to me. Pete Dietrich, I'm going to ask a favor. We have so many questions coming in. They want to see how you make these great videos. So let's jump to doing the math, and let's show your video that you've just finished. All about how you make the videos. Then we'll come back and talk a little more about instructional techniques.
Sure.
So Pete, that's the video that runs on slide 8.
The demo.
Yeah. Not this, but we just need
Hey guys, Mr. Backerberg here. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to my flipped classroom. Now, before we get into what a flipped classroom is, I first want to take a second to talk about what my classroom used to look like. Before I decided to flip my classroom, the first 5 to 10 minutes as much as they need to. And then once they feel comfortable, they can start working on flipped classroom is. I first want to take a second to talk about what my classroom used to look like. Before I decided to flip my classroom, the first 5 to 10 minutes of class would be used as sort of like a warm-up time. And in that warm-up time, I would either answer questions from the previous night's homework, or there may be some practice problems up on the board that we would work through together. From there, the next 35 to 40 minutes would be spent giving the new lesson for the day. And then if we were lucky, there would maybe be 5 to 10 minutes at the end of class where students could start practicing some of those problems based on the lesson they just received. And I just wasn't sure that this was the best way to spend the limited class time that I had with my students. So I started doing some research, and I found one question that really got me thinking. And the question is, what is the best use of the face-to-face time that I have with my students? And that's really what got me interested in the flipped classroom. So now let's take that traditional classroom that most of us are used to and compare it to a flipped classroom. So we've already talked a little bit about what a traditional classroom looks like. So in class, students receive the lesson via a lecture. And then after class, or at home, students are expected to work on either book problems or maybe a worksheet to try to reinforce some of those ideas that showed up in the lecture. Well, a flipped classroom, at its very basics, interchanges the roles of the class time and the at-home time. So now, as far as receiving that lecture or receiving new information, that's going to typically happen at home in the form of a video. And then what's going to happen in class is there's going to be an opportunity to work on problems either individually or as a group to reinforce that content that was covered in the video. So we've talked a little bit about what a flipped classroom is, but now let's talk about...
There we go. Folks, this is also available on Justin's YouTube video, but I want to get to the production workflow video. So if we can get there, and that's the one. Thank you. So folks, let's take a look at this, and then Justin we can spend quite a bit of time with all of you answering some of your production questions and workflow questions, but I think this will answer a lot of the questions that are coming in.
Yeah, this will give a nice behind the scenes look.
Yeah, this is the how-to, the sizzle reel, right?
Hey everyone, my name is Justin Backerberg. I'm a high school math teacher from Reedsburg, Wisconsin, and in this video I'm going to give you a behind the scenes look as to how I use my Wacom Intuos tablet to make instructional videos for my classroom and for my students. So this setup that I've got here is just slightly different than I would use on a normal basis. I've got my iPhone over my shoulder shooting down at my desk just so you can see what's happening at my desk at the same time that you can see what's happening on my computer screen, and you can also see my face in the camera. Setting things up with what I'm using on my computer, I've got Smart Notebook running. I've got a smartboard in my classroom, so I already had all my slideshows made for my lessons. So I'm just going to record what I've already got. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel. I've also got Camtasia running. That's what I use to do my recording and my editing. So if we jump into things, I'm going to use my Wacom tablet to help me write things out just like I would normally do if I were recording an instructional video for my students. In math, When my students are doing their work, I always expect them to show all their work on their paper. So it's important for me as their teacher to model that when I'm creating my instructional videos. So let's say I was creating a video for algebra about solving two-step equations. And let's say we wanted to solve the equation 3x plus 4 equals 16. Now you can see on my iPhone and on the computer, as I'm moving my pen around on my Wacom tablet, you can see the cursor moving on my computer screen. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a line down the equal sign, because anytime we cross the equal sign, we need to use an inverse or an opposite operation as we're trying to solve this equation. So the first thing I'm looking at is this plus 4 here. In order to get rid of plus 4, we need to do the opposite, so we're going to subtract 4. And whatever we do to the left side of the equation, we also have to do it to the right side. So I'm also going to subtract 4 from that 16. Now, I haven't changed the 3x at all, so I'm just going to carry that down. Nothing is changing there. This plus 4 and this minus 4, those are inverses of each other, so they're going to cancel each other out. We've still got our equal sign along that line. And then on the right-hand side, if I take 16 and subtract 4, I'm going to get 12. We've got one more step that we need to take in order to get that x alone, and we're going to take a look at that 3. 3x really means 3 times x. So in order to get rid of multiplication, we want to use division. So when we see times 3, to get rid of that, we're going to divide both sides by 3. The times 3 and the divided by 3 are going to cancel each other out, leaving us with just a plain x. We've got our equal sign in there. And then on the right-hand side, if we take 12 and divide it by 3, we're going to get 4 as our answer. So that's how I can use my Wacom tablet to write out all the steps of solving an equation to really model what I want my students to do when they're solving their equations. Thanks for watching.
That was great, Justin. So helpful to show people. I think we had a question somebody has. You use Camtasia to record, right?
I do, yeah.
Make your slides on Smart Notebook.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And Justin, just because we're seeing pieces and parts. Curious, what are the typical length of these videos? Because we know engagement is an issue with kids, right? We're not going to get them to sit for 45 minutes and watch math videos. So how do you decide what to show, when to show it, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so depending on the topic that I'm covering, I really want to keep my videos 5 to 8 minutes long, no longer than 10 if I can avoid it. Just the attention span starts to kind of wane after that. So trying to be more direct and more concise with that information is definitely beneficial. Now there are nights where I'm going to ask my students to watch more than one video. So if I assign 3 different videos, if they're each 5 minutes long, that ends up being 15 minutes of total watch time. So I don't feel too bad about 15 minutes worth of stuff. But on any given night, I wouldn't want to ask my students to probably do more than 20 minutes of stuff. Just because as they're watching the videos, I always tell my students, make sure you're liberally using the pause, the rewind. Make sure you're really understanding what's happening as you're watching the video so that when you come to class, you're ready to start applying things. So okay. I usually tell them if it's a 5-minute video, expect it to take double the time. So 10 minutes to watch it and write things down and pause and account for all of those things.
Okay. A couple questions come in. There's still questions about the use of color, and if we have time at the end, maybe we can talk more, certainly, right, sure. about that. Question about Camtasia, is it free? Is it open source?
Camtasia is something that I bought. Okay. It is a paid software. There are a lot of good free options out there. I'm a Mac user. So when I first initially started making my videos, I used QuickTime, which is already built in on the Mac computers. And there's an option for you to be able to do some screen recording, some screencasting using QuickTime. Also Screencastify is a free option that's out there. The free version, I think, has a limit of a 5-minute video. But it's a fairly inexpensive thing. And then you can have longer videos there. But I guess what I like about Camtasia is it's a pretty powerful editing tool. So I don't have to worry so much about trying to get it right on the first time. You know, I have a tendency to stumble over my words when I get talking pretty quickly. So it's nice to just be able to have a tool that's going to let me edit out any of those stumbles that I may have along the way. So it's something that I chose to invest in. And it's, you know, I've been using it for 5 years now. So it's definitely, in my opinion, paid for itself.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. And I see somebody just added in the Q&A with those kinds of solutions and things like Edpuzzle or Nearpod, you can record and you can add audio, explainer audio and things like that. So there's lots of options.
Yeah, Edpuzzle is something that I haven't personally used yet, but I played around a lot with it in the spring. And the nice thing about Edpuzzle is in the videos, when you're assigning videos to students, you can embed questions in there so they can respond to those questions as they're going through and watching the videos. Okay. And that's something I'm considering using once we go back here in the fall, but I haven't implemented it yet.
All right. So Justin, I think the other thing is you're also using your Intuos, not just to make videos, but when you're working with small groups of students or one-to-one with a student. And I think you told me you're marking up their assignment, you're helping them work through problems or when they get stuck, and you can do that via, you know, screen share. Talk a little bit about how that's been happening.
Yeah, so specifically once we had to go full virtual in the spring here, I didn't have that face-to-face time where I could sit down in a desk with a kid and say, you know, here's a problem that we're going to look at and be able to write things out. So going virtual made things a lot more difficult. But yeah, I was able to use my tablet. And what I would do is a couple days a week, I would do Google Meets. We're a Google school, so we run everything through Google. So we would set up Google Meets, and it would be really just open office hours where kids could come in and they could ask questions. So if we're doing a pre-calc assignment and a kid's got a question on problem number 17, you know, I could use my tablet and my Smart Notebook software and share my screen with the students and be able to write things out with them and kind of ask them those same leading questions that I would if we were directly in the classroom with each other. So that worked out nicely. And then there was a second part to your question, but I forgot what it was.
Even small groups. And I know for a lot of us, sometimes the technology students are using are their smartphones. So I think you said you've had students like take a picture of their homework.
Oh yeah. Yeah. As far as marking up assignments. Yeah. So
tell us a little about that.
Yeah. When I would have students submit assignments, the easiest thing for me was just having them take a picture with their phone and send it to me. And then I could use my tablet to do some markups on the picture I would just upload the picture into a Smart Notebook slide, and then I could annotate on there and then just export that and send it back to them. And I could say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I see with the work that you're doing. Here's more so what I'm looking for, that kind of thing. So the tablet is really useful as far as being able to write things out that way. When I first started making my videos, I tried to just use my mouse to click and write. And I have bad handwriting from the start. So trying to write things out just using my mouse wasn't working. So I needed a different solution. And that's really how I stumbled upon the Wacom tablet. Is I just did a quick Google search for a writing tablet that I could use with my computer. And I came across the Wacom tablet. And the thing that's so nice about it is it's super easy to use. You plug it into your computer. Mine is USB wired, but some of the newer models have Bluetooth built right into them, so you can hook up with Bluetooth. And it really just kind of replaces the functionality of your mouse. So as you saw in my kind of how-to video, when I would move the pen around on the tablet, the cursor would move around just like I would if I was moving the mouse. But it's so much more natural writing things out on the tablet. It really feels like you're just writing things out on a sheet of paper.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. Justin, you and I had planned to talk about assessment and what's going to go on, and we've had a couple comments in the Q&A about, or the chat, about assessment and how you think you're going to handle this, because going forward, because you were starting in March, you were all remote. Now, at least to start, you're going to be in kind of a hybrid situation. So, what do you think? What are the plans for assessment for you right now?
So let's start with the spring. When we first went full virtual in the spring there, that I would have students taking pictures of their assignments and sending them to me. And that was just kind of the daily work to really solidify the information to make sure that they were understanding things. And then one tool that I used more so for, I guess, what I would consider the more summative type of things, quizzes and tests and that kind of thing. I used a program called Delta Math.
Okay.
And that's just a
link to that at the end too.
Yeah. And that's it. It's really organized kind of by topic, and it has middle school topics all the way up through calculus topics. And I think there's even some computer science things on there as well. And so I would just create different assignments on there. And the nice thing about Delta Math is it's got a huge library of questions that it pulls from. So if I'm assigning a quiz to a kid or a class of kids, when it pulls questions for the topic, it's going to pull different questions for each kid. So it really kind of minimizes the cheating there as far as being able to share answers and that kind of thing. Because if you're pulling from a library of a few hundred or even thousands of questions, the chances that a kid is going to get a duplicate question compared to somebody else is fairly slim. So when I would do quizzes, and I even did not official tests, I just call them kind of practice tests for the kids in the spring. I would use Delta Math to do those. In the fall here, we're going to be going back with a hybrid model. So half the kids will come in on Monday, the other half of kids will come in on Tuesday, and that kind of thing. I plan on trying to keep assessments as traditional as possible. So pencil and paper while they're in the classroom with me. Now I understand that at any given moment, we might have to pivot to go full virtual again. And I plan on using Delta Math again as a way of just being able to check in with students and make sure that they're understanding that content that I really want to get across to them.
Sure. Makes perfect sense. In some of your classes, you even do projects, right? You have some project-based instruction, and I bet there's a lot of our educators in the audience who would love to hear a little more about your project-based learning.
Sure, and that's that kind of goes back to using the flipped classroom as well. Not having to spend so much time presenting material really opens up that in-class time to do different things like project-based things. So having, if I think about geometry is can be kind of a very hands-on type of class. So when we're, doing our measurement unit, if we're talking surface area and volume and that kind of thing, having a project laid out. So instead of just here's a worksheet with 10 problems on it for you to go through and solve, really having different projects that and different activities that they can go through to try to make that learning or that math more concrete and more visible to them.
That's awesome. Justin, we had talked as we were getting ready for today that this start of the school year is really kind of unlike any other, just because of what happened in the spring. And we had some learning loss. We had the usual summer slide, etc. And I got the sense from you as we were talking that having so much of these instructional chunks available to kids on video was going to help with review,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
kind of either creating or recreating some prior knowledge and scaffolding. So are you going to assign review sessions for kids with the videos, or how are you planning to handle that sort of, that was March, April, May, and
Right.
now it's September, and here we go. What's your plan here?
Yeah, so a lot of it I'm going to kind of play by ear with my students. I haven't done it yet, but I have plans of creating full libraries of videos, starting with pre-algebra topics all the way up through pre-calc and maybe even calc topics. So that way, if I run into a situation where, you know, if I'm in a pre-calc class and we're reviewing or supposed to be reviewing factoring quadratics, and there's a kid who says, you know, I'm not getting this factoring stuff, then I could, you know, pull up a video that I made for my Algebra 1 kids where they first start learning about factoring and that type of thing. And I could say, hey, why don't you check this one out real quick? This is going to be, you know, instead of approaching it as this should be review, this, you know, this maybe lower level video for Algebra 1 kids would approach things more so at an introductory level for them to, you know, if they did miss out on that, if they were gone or if it was due to this being shut down, having those videos available to them to be able to go back and watch at any given time, just to refresh their memory on a topic, or if it was something that they didn't get the first time around, just be able to have a second, third, fourth look at it to really try to enforce those topics.
Right, to begin to build some comprehension of the
definitely
processes. Seems to me, but Justin, you can speak to this far better than I can, that this gives you another tool to really individualize and personalize instruction without the traditional time it would have taken to sit, at least get a start on that.
Right.
With kids.
Yeah. So kind of like I was mentioning with the review and having different, having that different library of videos available, it really is a great way to personalize learning for each student and really kind of meet each student where they're at with their specific level of math understanding.
Okay.
You know, if there are things that, you know, you think they should have learned back in Algebra 1 or back in Algebra 2, and now they're at the pre-calc level and they're still having trouble with those things, just having those extra resources available to just say, hey, I see that you're struggling with this particular topic. Take 5 minutes, go watch this quick little video, see if that rings some bells, if that refreshes your memory a little bit, or if we really need to sit down and really dig deep one-on-one together on that.
For that, sure, that makes perfect sense. There's an interesting question that's come in, and this goes back to this whole issue of engagement. And we know there were challenges with engagement in the spring. We can maybe assume that some of those challenges will remain, right? And the question is there, how do you know if your students fully watched a video before doing an assignment?
So what I do, at least when I'm in the classroom with my students, is I just do a quick notes check. Just say, hey, get your notebooks out. I'm checking, you know, chapter 4, section 1, that type of thing. And, you know, they'll all pull their notebooks out and I can just run through and do a quick look. And, you know, maybe Johnny doesn't quite have his done. So I sit down with Johnny and I say, hey, you know, we were supposed to have these done. You know, what's going on? And maybe Johnny had a baseball game the night before or had something going on. I try to be really flexible with my students. So I try not to harp on them too much if there's something that they don't have done. The nice thing about the videos is that they can watch them whenever and wherever they want. So if they did have something going on the night before and they just didn't have time to get around to the videos, then I say, hey, take 10 minutes here real quick. Let's get those videos watched and then we'll be ready to jump into things as far as whatever practice it is that we're doing for the day, whether that's problems out of the book or some sort of activity, that type of thing.
Okay, that's really helpful. That's really helpful. I want to be sure we leave some additional time to answer any additional questions that are coming in. We have lots of questions around compatibility with various software and other things. So let's jump ahead in our slides here. And I think where we want to go, right, is slide 9, if we can, Peter. Thank you. Justin, a couple of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about. When you and I first talked, you said there's one really important thing, and that's keeping the teacher in the picture when you're doing videos. You want to talk about that a little bit? And I know it's not all the questions about compatibility or integration coming in, but it's because it's really tempting to think you can just throw up 4 slides and annotate them and there it is. But you do it differently, and you want to talk about that a little bit?
So yeah, the whole thing about, especially if we end up going full virtual, I'm not going to be able to build the same type of relationship with my students that I would normally be able to in that face-to-face setting. So on my videos, just having a picture of me on there, having my live, or not live, but recorded video of me going through and doing the math problems, it starts to build some of that relationship. The students really see you as their teacher. You're the one presenting that material to them, as opposed to just some random voice that's, you know, being overlaid on a set of slides. But they're actually seeing you and watching you present the material and work the problems out. And, you know, it's not perfect, but it starts to build that student-teacher relationship. So that way, like I said, if we have to go full virtual to start with, they can build that relationship to me. And then if we do transition to, you know, a hybrid, or even being able to go back to full face-to-face, they've started to build that relationship with me as being their teacher. Okay. So that we can, you know, continue to build on that when we do have that actual face-to-face time.
Okay, I think that's so important and so helpful. And the other question that comes up, right? Your videos are wonderful and have great production value. Not everybody's going to be able to do that at first. So for people just starting out, what would you recommend? And then what do we add to kind of keep the engagement up, right?
Yeah. So I've been, like I said earlier, I've been flipping my classroom for 5 years. And so I've had a fair amount of practice creating these videos. I don't know exactly how many videos I have, but I would have to guess it's somewhere around 300 videos right now, maybe even more than that. But so yeah, I've had a lot of practice along the way, and a lot of, you know, reshooting of things and editing of things. But I guess when you're first getting into things, you really have to think to yourself, you know, do I need this video to be perfect, or really do I need it tomorrow? So it's, you know, you might not be able to edit out all of the stumble over the words, or you might make a mistake as you're going through and solving things, and you're just going to have to adjust, just like you would if you were live in the classroom. You know, when I'm up in front of the room talking to kids, I'll stumble over my words. You know, when I'm solving an equation up on my smartboard, I'll accidentally add something when I should have been subtracting something. You just say, hey, time out. We have to, you know, take a step back here. I made an error and I need to fix that. So it's really, it kind of depends on how comfortable you are with the technology that you're using and the things that you have available to you. I've built up my workspace over these 5 years. You know, I've purchased a separate monitor, and I've got a separate webcam and a separate microphone, but you don't need all of those things. You really can just use a laptop that your district gives you to do the screencasting and the screen recording, and most laptops that you're going to get these days have a webcam right on there, and they've got a decent enough microphone on there to where it's going to be able to pick up your voice as you're talking through things and doing all those annotations. So it doesn't need to be a big Hollywood production. It just, you know, it's just you trying to get that content across to your students in whatever way works best for you and works best for them.
That just makes perfect sense. Let's jump forward a slide here. Yeah, these are, and I think these resources will be available, the slide decks, so that you all can see just some of the resources that Justin's used. Some of these offer free versions for educators, right, Justin? And some are paid subscriptions, so you just have to check. But there are a couple tips we might want to share, and that is, often your school or district may have licenses for these already available. Check with your technology directors. It's just, if you haven't asked to use them before, you might not know. And oftentimes for the free versions, you may need to talk to your technology team, and they will help you. But these resources and others are certainly available on the Whatcom site. Before I hand it over to Charles, so that he can tell you a little bit about all of the things Whatcom is doing for math and science and STEM and across the curriculum, we want to thank Justin. You have just been fantastic sharing all of these insights and resources with us. So thank you, and I am quite sure you'll get some Twitter messages and all kinds of things from folks. So thank you. And I also want to thank Charles for answering a lot of the technical questions coming in, so that Justin can talk through the instructional pieces of this. And with that, Charles, do you want to jump on and begin to talk through what all of the other things that Whatcom is making available? And we'll head for slide 12. Peter? Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for attending the webinar. Thanks for all the great questions. Yeah, I was jumping back into my old trade show days, answering a lot there, and I know there's a lot going on. Justin was, as he was explaining in the presentation today, he was using our Whatcom Intuos. He had a bit of an older model, but just, very similar functionality, a really great starting price at $79.95. We're really highlighting our retailer Best Buy today. We find there's a Best Buy close enough to anyone, relatively easy to pick up. In a lot of cases, you could order it this afternoon and go pick it up. And I know in the COVID-19 situation, they're actually delivering it into your car in some regions. So pretty cool there. So yeah, if you're looking for just a basic tablet to get started, it works with your Mac or your PC. I had a lot of questions. Does it just plug in? Yes, it absolutely just plugs in. There's a little bit of a setup where it will download a driver. For 98% of people out there, it's a super easy process. You just plug it in. I know we did have some questions. Does this work for a Chromebook? We don't have official support for Chromebook. I have heard it working sometimes and sometimes not. But personally, if you have a Chromebook, I would not recommend using it at this point, just because sometimes it just doesn't work, just because of the way a Chromebook is set up. But if you have a Mac or a PC, it'll absolutely work. So again, if you're looking for something just to get started, and you want to be, starting annotating, drawing with graphs, creating great videos like Justin, it's a perfect product. As you can see, all of Justin's work is done on that. We also have a brand new product called our Wacom One, just released in January of this year. Really a fantastic little device. It acts as a pen display. So what you can do is you can actually draw on the pen screen itself. It can act either as a mirrored monitor, or it can act as a separate monitor. So someone mentioned Pear Deck, where you kind of are wanting to use maybe a dual monitor situation. Is great for that. Again, really the only differences between these two products is the screen itself. And so for some people, they really enjoy the fact of drawing what they're seeing. And as probably Justin can attest to, when you get a Wacom Intuos, it is, it does take a bit of a learning curve, but you can pick it up within a day. I have had some questions, kind of about splitting the monitors up and doing all that. And to be honest, to answer that question is really think of these products, especially the Wacom Intuos, as your mouse or your trackpad replacement. It really is functions as a mouse fundamentally and a control device, but also can be used to create that fluid and natural drawing experience. So if you were writing formulas, annotations, graphs, and whatnot. And that's about it. Again, you know, we have links in here. I'll put some more in the chat to go purchase on Best Buy. We also have, if you want to learn more about our products, we have a specifically designed landing pages that really speaks to math and science teachers, you know, and then it has a little bit more details on both of those products. And that's from my end. If there's any questions I can answer.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And we want to thank everybody who joined us today. And across the country, great big applause for Justin and getting all of these things ready. And thanks to our production crew at Wacom. You guys were awesome. So we hope to see you all again. We have other webinars coming up. Thank you all.